As we begin to settle into the service, I want to welcome our special guest this morning, who is David Christopher. He's the author of the book, The Holy Universe, a book that transforms the scientific facts of the universe into a soulful story of creation. The book explores the unfolding of the universe from the beginning of all beginnings to the emergence of Earth and human beings, all the way to what David calls the, quote, great transformation brought on by the global crises that humanity now faces. We really look forward to hearing what David has to say. Following the second service today, so at about 12:30, David will be facilitating a workshop where we can explore some of these ideas in more depth. So hopefully those of you who are here for the first service will take a beautiful walk and then come back around 12:30 and join us for that conversation. In addition to being here today, on Thursday evening, David is going to be at the Hugo bookstore in Andover. If you'd like more information about that, just speak to him or me. And we'll also have David's books on sale during social hour today. David left behind the corporate and airline world to pursue his passion for exploring the answers to humanity's questions about our place in the universe and to help bring forth a new story for our turbulent times. David, we are delighted to have you with us here this morning. Now, let us center our hearts and minds as we begin our service today.
Good morning. We gather this morning to remind ourselves that we are not alone. We gather to look one another in the eye, join heart to heart, mind to mind, remind us that we are all connected to that inner wisdom that is alive in each one of us, connected to each other, connected to all the people that populate this planet, and connected to this planet Earth, this sphere that is spinning in the midst of space, holding so much life and possibility, connected to the earth, to the water, to the plants, to the animals. And we are connected to the great mystery of the universe. Within us lives stardust. Within us lives the energy, the same energy that was released 14.5 billion years ago in the Great Big Bang. And somehow that release has become you, has become us, forever connected. Let's forget.
Please join us in our chalice lighting words. The family who will be lighting our chalice will come forward, and our chalice lighting words can be found in your order of service. Can you please tell us your names? I forgot. Thank you. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you. Invite Leslie to come to tell us a bit more about the warmth of community.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Leslie Lamarise, and I would like like to speak to you today about what the warmth of community means to me. Have you ever felt that you didn't measure up? I spent the first 40 years of my life feeling just that. My dad passed away when I was young, so I used to envy families that had two parents. My family is not the Waldens. More like the Bunkers on Archie Bunker or the Barones on Everybody Loves Raymond. And I used to look at families that appeared to be the Waldens as superior. I'm going to tell you a secret, but don't tell anyone. I am not a perfect size 2. In my family, if you're over 100 pounds, you are big boned. And you're strongly encouraged to lose weight, for your health. I learned differently than other people. My mom always used to say, "Why can't you be like your cousin Mary? She gets all A's." So I looked at being intelligent as unattainable. Yep. In my family, mostly everyone is a lawyer or a doctor, and you can imagine the excitement in my family when I announced that I was going to college to become a social worker to assist drug-addicted homeless youth. Yep, that went over great. Yep. I've been told I have a very quirky sense of humor. I work with medically fragile adults, and it's a good day if I don't get peed or pooped on. So you can imagine the fun that I can have with that. I spent over 40 years pretending to be someone that I'm not, just so I could fit in. So why am I telling you this? Because since joining UUCR, I have found myself. I have found the real Leslie. Yes, I may sing off key when I sing the final hymn. Yep. Or I might try to tell a joke at coffee hour and everybody just looks back at me confused. That's okay. I learned I don't have to be perfect, and there's still a place for me here in this community. So I want to say thank you for letting this one-parented, family-issued, big-boned, quirky social worker who learns quite differently feel that she is accepted and that she truly has something to contribute to here at UUCR. I truly feel the warmth of this community. Thank you.
Good morning.
How did we get here, after all? Why are there stars in the sky, the moon and the sun, the winds and the rain? Throughout the ages, people have created stories to explain the wonder and the awe of the universe. Those stories have used animals like coyotes and ravens to help explain those great mysteries of life. And this is one of those stories from the Tlingit Indians of southeastern Alaska. Long ago, when the earth was new, so new that people had no sun or moon or stars for light, there lived a great chief who had 3 beautiful wooden boxes. The raven, a powerful and mysterious bird, heard talk that the chief kept the sun, the moon, and the stars in these boxes. He thought it was wrong for the chief to hide the lights where no one could see them. Raven hated the darkness and wanted to share it. So one day he changed himself. He was a trickster, after all, into a baby who came to live at the chief's home. The chief grew to love this baby, a baby with quick, dark, bright eyes. And one day, the boy who was Raven reached for the 3 wooden boxes sitting on a shelf, and he began to cry, and nothing would quiet him. Finally, the chief gave the boy the box with the stars inside. You may look at the box, he told the raven, but do not open the lid. Raven played happily with the box until no one was looking, and then he opened up the box. Up flew the stars to the top of the lodge where they lived and out into the sky. They rose high, filling the heavens with millions of sparkling lights. And the people looked up and they said, "What beautiful lights we have in the sky." At first, the chief was sad because his stars were gone. But Raven Boy smiled sweetly, and the chief forgave him. Then, however, Raven wanted more light, and he reached for another box, and he started to cry. Nothing would quiet him, and the king said, "I suppose that now I must give you the box with the moon to play with, or you will never stop crying." Well, the king, the chief, gave the box to the raven, who opened it up. And he took out the moon and pretended that it was a ball. Raven tossed the moon up in the air, and out it went through the top of the smoke hole in the lodge and into the night sky. It floated up between the earth and the stars, and people said, "This moon looks glorious next to the stars." But soon, Raven wanted the last box, the one with the most brilliant light in the world. Raven cried for the box, but the chief ignored Raven until Raven cried himself sick, so sick that he couldn't eat or drink. The chief gave the box to the raven, but he said, "Don't open the lid, or the light will burn your eyes." Raven played with the box, but then he grew curious, and he pulled the lid open. In that moment, the boy who was Raven turned back into a bird. The sun flew out of the box with blindingly brilliant light, and Raven flew up to the top of the lodge, and he tried to escape. The chief was angry, and he realized that Raven had tricked him. He cast a spell to close the smoke hole up at the top of the lodge. Raven held on to the box with his beak, and he tried to get out. And at last, he could squeeze through the smoke hole of the lodge. But the chief's magic soot clung to the raven, turning him black from head to tail. And since then, all ravens have been black. Raven flew into the sky to free the sun. As he lifted the lid of the last box, a tremendous noise came from the box, and the sun vaulted high up into the heavens. And from that day to this one, the sun, the moon, and the stars have shone on all the people of the earth. And high in the sky, if you look up, you may just see Raven flying off to watch Earth's creatures as they look up toward the sun and the moon and the stars. And that's the end of my story. And now I'd like to invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 301 in the Gray Book, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky. Number 301.
So I know this morning that many of us are holding in our hearts names of those we love. So I'd like you to just let one name come to sit in your heart for just a moment of someone you love very much. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to speak those names out loud so that we all together can hold the names of so much love. So let the naming of our loved ones begin.
Allie.
And now I invite you to call into your heart and mind the names of those people you know who may be struggling on this day. They might be feeling sick. They might be lonely or afraid or challenged. They may struggle with anxiety or depression. Might have financial problems or they're unemployed. Who on this day needs to be surrounded by love, by hope, by strength, by courage, by the spirit of perseverance? Perhaps that name is your own.
Happy birthday, John.
In a moment, I'll ask us all to call out the names of those who would like to surround with light, healing, and love. And let our naming begin.
As we light our candle of community, we remember all these names and all those in our church community who are facing challenges, are homebound, ill, or recovering from surgery. We remember those who are grieving, who struggle with depression or anxiety, who struggle with financial issues or joblessness, who feel deep sadness or loss. We also think beyond the walls of this congregation and open our hearts to the world, to all those who yearn for peace, sustenance, life, freedom, or justice. We especially remember the people of Ukraine and Crimea during this volatile time. For all these, and knowing there is in the end no difference between them and us, for we are all one, we light this candle.
As we prepare to pray together, our call to meditation and prayer, sort of the doorway that we walk through together into a deeper place inside ourselves. The words are, when I breathe in, I breathe in peace. And when I breathe out, I breathe out love. Donna will lead us. Reflection come from my colleague and friend, the Reverend Sheldon Bennett, adapted.
Let us pray.
O deep mystery of our lives, voice in our hearts and light in our minds, we are here together as adventurers called forth in spirit, children, youth, men and women, moving, yearning, questing, pushing the limits of our lives outward to what is more loving and just, more beautiful and true.
Here in this sanctuary, this place made holy by the memories, the aspirations, the purposes and ideals of those before us, we would be inspired by their example. These were women and men of vision. These were people of spirit.
We here today are also people of spirit. We too are struck in awe before the great mystery of the cosmos. We too are powerfully moved by a deep concern for our world and our care for one another. The Spirit moves also in us as a free religious community joined in a common covenant of aspiration, commitment, and hope.
May ours be a faith that is more than just beautiful words and high ideals. May ours be a faith of vitality and commitment, a faith that burns in our hearts and blazes in our minds. May ours be a faith that shines to the world as the light of deeds and the witness of actions.
O source and spirit of our lives, may we respond boldly to your call to adventure, for justice, for love, for joy.
May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.
Now I can start getting the t-shirts organized. Huh? No, don't know.
Well, new kids, well, an awful lot of new kids.
first sung by Kermit the Frog will fill our sanctuary. And as we relish in another connection, the rainbow connection, I invite you to come forward to light silent candles of joy, of sorrow, of remembrance.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed it. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? What do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep, and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is this the sweet sound that called the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me.
Our reading this morning comes from Holy Universe, the book written by our special guest speaker, David Christopher.
This comes from a chapter entitled Awe.
The sage bent from her chair to pick up a dried leaf, withered, crumbling, and faded to a pale green. "Look at this leaf," she said. "Quite unremarkable, isn't it?"
Well, I might have said yes before, but knowing you, I'm pretty sure you have a different answer.
"Indeed, I do." She handed the leaf to the seeker. "Look at it closely. Notice the lines or veins, how they branch out from the main stem."
The seeker did so, tracing the veins with his eyes.
"Notice its symmetry, how each vein occurs at regular intervals. And as you continue to look at this leaf, know that it used starlight from the sun and stardust forged billions of years ago in the form of carbon dioxide and water to create itself. It followed a code that evolved over eons in an unbroken line from billions of years ago to today."
Interesting.
More than interesting. Fascinating. And more than fascinating, it is indeed miraculous.
I have to admit, it doesn't strike me quite that deeply. said the seeker.
Not surprising. You have been thoroughly trained to ignore the constant miracle of the infinite that surrounds you, and to pay attention instead to the flashy images, selfish ideas, and anxious stories perpetuated upon you by modern mind.
No arguing that, he said, but it's even more than that. It feels a bit childish.
Of course. And where does that thought come from?
The seeker shook his head and chuckled. Another story from modern mind? That it's childish to look around the world in awe, isn't it?
Exactly. And that story robs you of another habit you could practice to build your sense of connection to the infinite. Perhaps it might be useful for you to try this. Look around, see what miracles surround you, and say out loud, "Beautiful."
That sounds forced, like I'm pretending to look at a world in awe. It reminds me of telling myself, good job.
That's quite all right. In fact, you can start by simply pretending. Intentionally pause for a moment and practice exclaiming, "Beautiful," to yourself when you see a leaf, a small flower, your daughter's eyes, the graceful motion of your pets, even weeds growing through cracks in the sidewalk. Take time to notice color, shape, texture, movement, sound, smell, even taste, and pretend at first to marvel at how each of these is part of the unbroken chain of life, stretching back for millennia. Notice also hills, clouds, sky, and reflect that they are all made of stardust. It harkens back to the beginning of all beginnings.
Okay, said the seeker. It's like paying attention to stories, right?
It is. I find that not only has it had the benefit of keeping my stories in check, but it also helps me to move beyond the intellectual idea of the web of life as sacred into a deeper experience of the sacred. To me, the awe I hold toward the web of life is core to my spirituality. And why not? Isn't the web of life, even the entire cosmos, where my body came from?
Here ends the reading.
It is my great pleasure to welcome to our pulpit a seeker, a dreamer, and a stargazer, David Christopher.
So I'm on an airplane descending into Logan a couple of days ago. And I'm looking out at this stretch and vast stretches of the built environment that humanity has created. And I'm feeling that same fear, that same anxiousness that I get when I travel in this way. And I see that, what we've done. And I also feel the carbon guilt, too, of here I am flying again. And in part, to preach the idea that we need to take better care of the planet. So there's that confusion happening also. And I notice that it's different than the vastness I feel when I look at the ocean, when I look at a desert or a conifer forest. There's the same vastness, but there's a different story behind it. There's a story of connection that I lose when I come to the built environment, especially when I'm disconnected from my community and from the humans around me. So, where does this story come from? About 10,000 years ago, when we started getting serious about agriculture, systemic agriculture, humanity started telling itself a story of separation. And this worldview, this idea of separation, is what, for me, seems to permeate those parts of the built environment that we've created that seem less beautiful, that seem less sacred. And one of the stories that came to me as I was writing this book was the story of modern mind. And about 400 years ago, more like 500 years ago, we came to the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, and the Industrial Revolution, and really started deepening this story of separation. And the overarching story that modern mind told itself was this: the universe is dead. The earth is only an insignificant rock spinning off into a lifeless cosmos. Humanity is a mere accident. In fact, all of life is a vacuous accident. And while the universe somehow creates many fantastic things, and humanity is the pinnacle of this improbable process, humanity must struggle in unending competition and must dominate the web of life. For humanity is ultimately alone in and alienated from, and must find its lonely stumbling way through a decaying and meaningless universe. A friend of mine who was trained as a physicist, when he read this part of the book, said, "My God, that's what I was taught in college. That was the story that was given to me." And when I read that story to one of the workshops I did, we had to stop, and there was a sense of, we need to grieve for this. We need to grieve for what's happened. And there's an irony in that, too, because I need that built environment for all the technology that I use. It's this paradox, this dichotomy within me. But then there's a new story that has come along in the past that science has brought us. In the past generation or so, that, wait a minute, maybe this isn't a meaningless universe. This new cosmology is starting to look at this mystery of, why is this universe so intelligent? Why is it so creative? Why is it creating greater consciousness? So the sage and the seeker go through, the sage tells the seeker in this story about a new creation, using science, telling in a more poetic way. And this is the story that she begins with. The infinite and the creation of the cosmos. It was the beginning of all beginnings. It was a time of no time, for time did not exist. A place of no place, for space did not exist. It was a beginning like no other, for there was no before. There was no time, there was no place. There was only the infinite and the unfathomable mystery. And the unfathomable mystery was all that was to be. And all that was to be was small, smaller than the tiniest particle, in the tiniest atom, in the tiniest dream. Although there was nowhere from which to see how small all that was to be was, for there was no outside and no inside, no here, no there, no now and no then, no darkness and no light. There was nothing save a whisper of what might be, an infinitesimal, indescribable, unfathomable mystery. And out of the unfathomable mystery, the infinite called forth to itself. It called forth space. It called forth time. It called forth being. And in that ecstatic instant, the universe slammed exploding outward into existence with all the jubilant and breathtaking beauty, brightness, energy, violence, power, and glory of a trillion newborn stars. It was a perfect explosion. 1 trillionth of a second slower, and the universe would collapse back into itself unfulfilled. 1 trillionth of a second faster, and the universe would spin out, dissipating into nothingness, never to create galaxies, stars, planets, life, nor us. A perfect explosion. And in the instance of this perfect explosion, the infinite began a brilliant and fierce cycle of gloriously creating, violently destroying, and gloriously creating once more, as if it knew what it was doing. So the sage continues with the story of creation, going through the creation of the galaxies, the stars, the second generation stars that begat planets, and the planets that beget life, and then the formation of the web of life. And at a certain point, the seeker interrupts and says, "Can I ask you something?" "Certainly," replied the sage. "You've used that phrase several times as if they knew what they were doing. What do you mean by that?" "What I mean is that something other than chance seems to be driving the universe, driving it to create. If chance alone were to account for the whole of the universe, then life might happen only once in billions upon billions of years. Yet we find ourselves here after only 14 billion years." "But it still could happen by chance, right?" said the seeker. "There are those who argue that point," said the sage. "But since the beginning of all beginnings, greater and greater order and complexity have emerged at such speed and creativity that I find chance alone a deeply unsatisfying explanation." So, this is the story that is the foundation for the new worldview that is coming forth, that's been coming forth for, some will say, a century or so. And it is this story, this worldview, that informs what the sage calls planetary mind. And the overarching story that planetary mind is now creating for itself is this: the creative force of the infinite flows throughout and embraces the universe, whole and complete, ever-changing, ever-creative, and ever-destructive, as the infinite plays and dances, as it seizes catastrophe to create anew, as it yearns for ever greater order, ever greater complexity, ever greater consciousness, and ever greater elegance, as it drives itself toward life. We are thus made in the likeness of the infinite. We are this creative force of the infinite, manifest in the form of a human being. We are an integral part of the ways of the universe and are subject to the lessons of the web of life. And along with the tiniest particles flashing in and out of existence, along with the most enormous clusters of galaxies stretching millions of light years across, we too belong to the infinite. We too are a sacred expression of the infinite. It has always been thus. We never were separate. This is the story that for me, I need as a foundation to reconnect. My spiritual, what this story means is that we belong here. We are not fallen. We are not flawed. We are part of an evolutionary process that has been acting as if it's known what it's doing since the beginning of all beginnings. And even science is beginning to agree with how we are connected to one another, to the web of life, to the cosmos. So my spiritual task is to remember that, to reconnect with that. When I look at the vastness of this built environment, to latch on to those practices that I've begun to create for myself. And how do I reconnect with that truth? In spite of that old worldview that built environment came out of, how do I reconnect and see the sacred in that also? Now, what I'd like to do is to close with one more piece that talks about, that counters the old story of how we are small, insignificant mites on this tiny rock in a vast and uncaring universe. The science is beginning to tell something else, that it is a perfect size. And this particular piece is called the smallest vessel. And I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to not look at my notes as I do this and see how well I do. is the smallest vessel that can hold a human being? Certainly it is more than the skin and bones that contain the pulsing of the individual life within. One human cannot forever stand alone and separate. Even the wise woman who lives in the forest apart from the others serves as the wise woman for those others. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least another human being. But two humans cannot forever stand alone and separate. They need young ones to raise and teach, to help with the daily chores, and finally to take charge and carry on as the elders grow old, their bodies dying, releasing their starlight, and becoming stardust once again. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the family. But the family cannot forever stand alone and separate. It needs others to help in the gathering of food, the building of shelter, and in caring for those who are sick or hurt, just as it helps those others in their own time of need. The family needs others to bind together with in times of catastrophe, of want, and of war, as well as to rejoice with in times of peace and of plenty. It needs others to share in the knowledge of earth's gifts and to learn the ways of the wise old ones. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the clan. The clan cannot long survive alone. It needs oxygen to breathe, food to eat, and waters to quench its thirst. It needs medicines to heal those who are sick. It needs insects to pollinate and clean the forests, deserts, savannas, and prairies. It needs jaguars, hawks, turtles, sparrows, trees, flowers, vines, and all manner of animals and plants to teach the wordless songs of the infinite. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the web of life. But the web of life cannot long stand alone. It needs a mother willing to share her flesh, air, water, the makings of soil, and the mixing together of life-giving elements so that the web of life might form itself out of her own body. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least Earth herself.
Just about the right size.
But Earth could not long survive alone. She needs a star to draw light from, to warm her creations, to cause the winds to blow, the clouds to form, and rains to fall. She needs a moon to steady her as she dances spinning through the seasons, and to cause her oceans to pulse with life-giving tides. She needs planets, comets, asteroids to pull and push and sometimes collide with her and stir the cauldron of creativity. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the sun and his children. But the sun and his children could not have come into being alone. They need a galaxy of stars, forming, living, dying, exploding, creating the elements for life. They need a billion seeds, a billion possibilities, and the death of the grandmother star to bring forth that one precise possibility that allowed our son to be born and his children to emerge. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the galaxy. But the galaxy could not have come into being alone. It needs forces, particles, and fire spinning forth from the first callings of the infinite, forming into billions of colossal galactic clouds spiraling out into the primordial cosmos. The smallest vessel that can hold a human being must include at least the universe. But the universe could not have come into being alone. It needs an unfathomable mystery, a time of no time, a place of no place, a beginning of all beginnings, so that the infinite can then call forth the universe, and the universe could then explode into being. Therefore, the smallest vessel that can hold a human being, that can hold you yourself, hold all beings, must include the whole of the infinite at the very least. Thank you so much.
Church is not created alone. It is created by all of us. The morning offering will be gratefully received at this time.
Hello again. Good morning. This is my friend Leslie.
This is my friend Ro.
We met at a UU Basics class where Leslie greeted me with that huge smile and never again forgot my name.
And Rosemary and I make each other laugh, sometimes in the most inopportune times.
But it's all good. One of the most joyful experiences I've had at UUCR was joining in the choir for the Alleluia chorus at Christmas, something I would never have done without my buddy Leslie.
And I even had fun my first time ushering because it was with my friend Ro. And now, in the warmth of community, the collection will gratefully be received.
Of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my opened mind, possessing and caressing me. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of life are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love which shines like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. Jai Guru Deva Om. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Jai Guru Deva. Jai Guru Deva. Jai Guru Deva.
Please join us in our chalice extinguishing words, which can be found in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts.
I invite us to join